Jack Dalton grew up in a quiet, working-class town tucked away in North Carolina. His upbringing was modest but stable. His father worked long hours as a mechanic, hands always coated in grease, while his mother spent her days teaching second grade at the local elementary school. From a young age, Jack had a quiet but unmistakable sense of leadership. He was the kind of kid who stood up to bullies on the playground and got the neighborhood kids together for impromptu baseball games. Those small-town values, honesty, loyalty, and resilience, shaped Jack deeply. By the time he graduated high school, he had already made a firm decision. He was joining the Marines. Inspired by his uncle's stories from Vietnam, he felt a sense of duty to serve, to protect, and to see more of the world than his sleepy hometown had to offer. His parents, while nervous, supported him in the end, proud of the strong-willed man their son was becoming. Boot camp was tough, but Jack adjusted quickly. He found structure in the chaos and thrived under pressure. During an early deployment to Okinawa, Japan, Jack found himself in the middle of a tense hostage crisis. His calm under fire and quick thinking helped resolve the situation peacefully, earning him a commendation. That experience did more than prove his nerves. It planted the seed of a dream, becoming a detective someday. After leaving the military, Jack returned to civilian life with a clear goal. He enrolled in a criminal justice program at a state college, supporting himself by working nights as a security guard. Balancing late shifts with intense coursework wasn't easy, but Jack wasn't one to complain. He put his head down and did the work. That's when he met Sabrina. Sabrina was a striking business major with sharp intelligence, a razor tongue, and a relentless drive to climb the corporate ladder. She had ambition in spades and made sure everyone around her knew it. Sabrina was magnetic, confident, clever, and unbothered by anyone who couldn't keep up. Jack was drawn in, perhaps too quickly. Despite having different ambitions, they found unexpected common ground in their love for old films and late-night walks. Their whirlwind romance escalated fast, and by the end of their senior year, they tied the knot at the courthouse, simple, efficient, and very Sabrina. Right after the wedding, Jack began working as an emergency dispatcher while waiting for his chance to join the police academy. Sabrina landed a high-profile role at a national investment firm, something she talked about more than she talked about the marriage itself. They rented a modest apartment in the suburbs and tried to build a life, even if the foundation already had cracks. Sabrina's job required regular travel to the East Coast, which Jack disliked from the start. She insisted it was necessary, brushing off his concerns as insecurity. One of those trips ended with unexpected news. She was pregnant. Their son, Ethan, was born just after Jack graduated from the academy. 2 years later, their daughter Chloe came along after a difficult birth. Sabrina was shaken by the experience and promptly insisted Jack get a vasectomy. She framed it as a mutual decision, but the pressure was one-sided. Jack relented, like he usually did. Both children had Sabrina's blonde hair and blue eyes, a fact that didn't go unnoticed. Jack's mother once casually mentioned that a DNA test wouldn't be the worst idea. Jack dismissed it, chalking it up to paranoia. He trusted Sabrina back then, at least. 5 years into his police career, Jack passed the detective exam and earned a promotion. With Sabrina's income climbing steadily, they moved into a comfortable 3-bedroom home in a respectable neighborhood. On paper, things looked great. Decent house, stable jobs, 2 healthy kids. But the cracks in their relationship widened with time. Then came the Christmas party. It was one of Sabrina's corporate events, hosted at a Marriott. These gatherings were more about networking than celebration, but Jack came anyway, trying to be supportive. That's where he met Miles Granger, a tall, well-groomed regional manager from New York with a smug smile and an unsettlingly familiar look. Blonde hair, blue eyes, confidence that bordered on arrogance. "Great to finally meet you," Miles said, shaking Jack's hand with practiced charm. "I hear you made detective." "Congrats." "Thanks," Jack replied, wary of the man's too-perfect demeanor. Miles's grin widened. "Sabrina didn't tell you? We were engaged in high school. Before I moved to New York." Jack blinked slowly. "That right? I also heard you earned a Silver Star. Pretty impressive. Guess the better man won." Jack stayed composed, but the jab lingered. For the rest of the night, he watched Sabrina, especially when she laughed a little too loudly at Miles's jokes and danced with him just a little too comfortably. There was nothing technically inappropriate, but something felt off. Way off. As the evening wound down, Miles made a point to say goodbye. "It was great seeing you again, Sabrina," he said warmly, then turned to Jack. "And a real pleasure meeting you, sir." Jack's voice was flat. "Likewise." The drive home was quiet. The tension sat between them like a third passenger until Jack finally broke the silence. That the guy you were engaged to? Sabrina took a beat too long before replying. Yeah, that was him. You didn't think it mattered to tell me you work with your ex-fiancé? He's in New York, Jack, she said, her tone dismissive, like it was a silly thing to care about. We hardly ever see each other, and he's in a completely different department, Sabrina said quickly. But, you're right. I should have told you. I'm sorry. Jack exhaled, his tone softening. It's okay. So what happened between you two? Sabrina offered a faint smile. I wanted stability, a marriage, kids, a home. He didn't. When he moved to New York, he made it clear he wasn't ready to settle down. That's when I ended it. Jack looked at her closely. Do you regret it? Not even a little, she said, her smile brightening. I have everything I ever wanted. She reached for his hand and kissed his knuckles gently. And right now, she added, voice soft, I'd really like you to take me to bed. Jack laughed, the tension momentarily lifting. Your wish is my command. After that night, Miles's name never came up again. Sabrina's business trips to the East Coast continued like clockwork, but Jack never noticed anything out of place. She seemed loving, attentive, and consistent. Their life kept moving forward. Over time, Jack met other colleagues from Sabrina's firm, at parties, work functions, the occasional dinner. None of them made him uneasy the way Miles had. Still, something about her workplace always left a strange impression. Her coworkers were polite, but there was a noticeable stiffness to their smiles, a certain caution in their eyes. One colleague in particular stood out, Lana. Years back, she and her husband had witnessed an armed robbery that Jack had resolved as an officer. They testified in court and earned his respect for their bravery. Since then, Jack had kept occasional contact, checking in when they crossed paths. Lately, though, Lana seemed different. At office events, her looks were guarded. Her eyes carried a kind of quiet worry he couldn't quite place, one he'd seen before in victims too afraid to speak. At first, he brushed it off, but that uneasy feeling gnawed at him, growing harder to ignore. Then, one afternoon, Jack decided to trust his instincts. Without warning Sabrina, he drove to her office. The moment he stepped through the doors, Lana intercepted him. Sabrina just stepped out, she said quickly. Jack raised an eyebrow. Do you know when she'll be back? She mentioned needing to drop something off at legal. Could take a while, Lana replied, hesitating. Jack studied her. Is everything okay? How are you and your husband? We're fine, she said, then faltered. Her eyes darted. But, I'm curious. Did you know Sabrina's been seeing Miles on her East Coast trips? Jack froze, his stomach twisting. That's not true. Why would you even say that? Lana avoided his gaze. I assumed you knew. I mean, you two have an open marriage, right? Because of your injury. Jack's eyes narrowed. What injury? Lana turned pale. She said you were hurt on duty. That you couldn't, you know. Jack's voice dropped. Lana, I've never been injured on duty, and there's nothing wrong with me. A beat passed. If you've got proof of what you're saying, he said coldly, now's the time to share. After a long pause, Lana nodded. I have photos. On my phone. I took them during one of her business trips. I didn't know if I should say anything, but I thought you deserved to know. Jack reached into his wallet and handed her his card. He flipped it over and scribbled his email on the back. Send them to me, he said. I've seen them together more than once, she admitted, voice low. It's been going on for years. Jack clenched his jaw. How long, exactly? 5, maybe 6 years, she said, almost whispering. His voice dropped. Don't tell Sabrina I came here. This stays between us. Lana nodded. Of course. I'll send them now. Jack turned and walked out, his thoughts spinning. Had Sabrina really been carrying on an affair for half a decade? He ran through memories in his head, looking for signs, anything he might have missed. But there was nothing. She always called during her trips. Always acted like everything was fine. Back at his car, Jack's phone buzzed. The email had arrived. He opened it. The photos shattered him. The first showed Sabrina and Miles mid-dance, locked in a deep, unmistakably passionate kiss. The second captured Miles's hand high on her bare thigh, beneath a short skirt Jack didn't recognize. But the third image destroyed him. Sabrina and Miles stepping into an elevator together, her head tilted toward his, her expression drenched in longing. Jack stared, unblinking. His heart pounded, and a tear broke loose down his cheek. He had suspected something once, but not like this. The betrayal cut clean through him. Back at his precinct, he tried to focus, but nothing made sense. The crime board he usually relied on to piece together complex cases now looked like gibberish. The room that once brought him clarity felt foreign. After an hour of pretending to work, he gave up. "You doing okay, Lieutenant?" a younger detective asked, catching him on the way out. Jack forced a half-smile. "Just heartburn. I'll see you tomorrow." At home, he opened a beer, sat down at the computer, and pulled up Sabrina's synced calendar. Her next East Coast trip was scheduled in 2 days. A full week. He transferred the photos from his phone, enhancing them, zooming in. When he focused on Miles's face, the air left his lungs. The resemblance was too strong. He pulled out photos of the kids, Ethan, then Chloe. He held them up to the screen. Ethan's eyes, his jawline. Chloe's smile. Miles's smile. His hands trembled. He gripped the edge of the desk to steady himself. There was only one thing to do. Without a second thought, he called a DNA testing service and arranged to pick up a kit that afternoon. He grabbed his keys, ready to leave, when his phone rang. Sabrina. He stared at her name for a second, then answered. "Hey," he said, forcing his voice to sound normal. "Hi," she replied. "You okay? You sound a little off." "I'm fine," he said calmly. "Just dealing with a rough case and a bit of stomach trouble." "Well," she said, "I'll be working late to prep for the trip. We're going out for dinner after, so I won't be home until late. Probably after 11. Can you handle the kids tonight?" "Of course," Jack replied smoothly. "No problem at all." "Thanks so much," Sabrina said, relief unmistakable in her voice. "Make sure they're in bed by 9:30. They've both got tests in the morning." "Will do," Jack replied calmly. "You're the best," she added warmly. "Love you. Love you too," he said, ending the call with practiced ease. As he set the phone down, Jack exhaled slowly. The hardest part of this wasn't finding the truth, it was pretending everything was fine. If Sabrina had been lying to him for years, he couldn't afford to let emotion cloud his judgment. He'd need to treat this like a case, methodical, composed, and surgically precise. That evening, Jack picked up the DNA kit from a discreet courier and returned home before the kids got back from school. He couldn't believe he was doing this, gathering evidence in his own home. But waiting for the truth to surface on its own was no longer an option. He'd collect the samples after they were asleep. Until then, he had to act normal. Sitting in his office, he opened his contacts and scrolled until he found a name he hadn't dialed in years, Frank Alston. Once a respected detective, Frank had retired and opened a private investigation firm in New York, dealing primarily with infidelity cases. If anyone could uncover the truth, it was Frank. Jack called. After 2 rings, a familiar voice answered. "Alston and Associates." "Frank, you old dog," Jack said, forcing a chuckle. "It's Jack Dalton." "Well, I'll be damned. Long time, brother. How's life in blue?" Jack kept it light. "Same old grind. You staying busy?" Frank laughed. "You'd be amazed how many people think vows don't mean a thing. Cheaters keep me flush." "What's up, you jumping ship?" "Not exactly. I need a favor. A serious one." Frank's tone dropped. "Talk to me. I think Sabrina's been having an affair. And if I'm right, it's been going on a long time." Frank didn't hesitate. "Say no more. You want surveillance. She's headed to New York Friday. Gone a week. I'll send her itinerary, the guy's name, and photos. You want full coverage? Video, stills, audio. Everything," Jack said, voice steady. "I need to know every single detail." Frank sighed. "Jack, you've backed me more times than I can count. Just cover expenses. No invoice. I don't want charity." "It's not charity. It's what friends do. You'd do the same for me." Jack smiled faintly. "Thanks, Frank. Really. Send what you've got tonight. I'll take care of the rest." "Will do." Just as the call ended, the kids burst through the front door, backpacks in tow. "Pizza for dinner?" Jack asked, standing in the kitchen. "Yeah," they yelled in unison. "Mom's leaving again, huh?" Ethan asked. "She's flying out Friday," Jack confirmed. "For a whole week?" Chloe groaned. "Yes, a week. So be good. I'm still a cop, remember? I've got handcuffs." They laughed, and for a brief moment, Jack smiled for real. They ate in the living room, watching cartoons and tossing crusts onto paper plates. After dinner, Jack leaned forward. "You two ready for your tests?" "Almost," Chloe shrugged. Ethan nodded. "Kinda. Well, time to study." "Mom lets us stay up till 10 before tests," Ethan protested. "Nice try," Jack smirked. "Lights out at 9. Shouldn't it be lights out at 9 o'clock, sir?" Chloe teased. "You're absolutely right," Jack said, standing tall. Now move it. Recruits. The kids laughed again as they headed upstairs, books in hand. Watching them go, Jack's smile faded. They were good kids, bright, kind, full of life. And if everything he feared turned out to be true, they were also victims of a lie none of them saw coming. Later, back in his office, Jack opened a new notebook. This was no longer just suspicion, it was an investigation. He printed Lana's photos, attaching them to a page. Then he added pictures of Ethan and Chloe, placing them beside enhanced images of Miles Granger. The physical similarities were jarring. Underneath the photos, he wrote one word in bold: paternity. Jack opened Sabrina's calendar on his computer and began matching her travel history to the conception dates of both pregnancies. The timing aligned perfectly. Too perfectly. He remembered Sabrina's words after the Christmas party. "I have everything a girl could dream of." Yeah, Jack muttered bitterly. Everything, including a second life in New York and a sucker back home raising her kids. By 9:45, he locked the notebook away. He checked on the kids. Both were fast asleep. With quiet precision, he collected their DNA samples, kissed each gently on the forehead, and returned to his study. There, he added his own sample, filled out the paperwork, sealed the kit, and slipped it into his briefcase. He leaned back in his chair, exhaustion settling in, but sleep felt a million miles away. Divorce was inevitable now. But beyond that loomed child support, custody battles, and legal complexities. If Sabrina had known Miles might be the father and still listed Jack on the birth certificates, could that constitute fraud? His jaw clenched. "What the hell have you done, Sabrina?" he whispered. Jack climbed into bed but lay staring at the ceiling, thoughts racing. Sabrina walked in just before midnight, her heels clicking softly across the floor. "You're still up?" she asked, sitting beside him. "Couldn't sleep," he said curtly. "Want to talk about it?" Jack stared ahead. "It's the case I'm working. A guy comes home, finds out his whole marriage was a lie. Turns out, the kids he raised aren't even his." Sabrina froze. "Oh my God," she said, her hand flying to her mouth. "What happened?" Sabrina asked softly. Jack feigned a cold edge in his voice. He snapped. "Killed his wife, then the kids. Finally, himself." She stared at him, horror spreading across her face. "That's awful. That poor man." Jack glanced sideways at her, his expression unreadable. "I can't imagine how he must have felt." A pause stretched between them before Sabrina leaned in slightly. "You know I love you, right?" she asked. "Yeah," Jack said. "And you believe me?" "Of course," he replied without hesitation. Her tone lightened a little. "By the way, I'm leaving a day early. I'll head out tomorrow instead." "What? Why?" Jack asked, unable to keep the surprise from his voice. "There are a few things I need to handle before the meetings start." I left the updated itinerary on the kitchen table. Jack gave a stiff nod, hiding the irritation bubbling under the surface. "I was hoping we'd get a little time together before you left." "I'm sorry," she said, already walking toward the bathroom. "But I really need a shower." As the door clicked shut, Jack moved quickly. He grabbed her purse and fished out her phone. He tried her go-to passcode. No luck. "She changed it," he muttered, unease creeping in. "Why now?" Setting the phone back, he carefully rummaged through the rest of her bag. His fingers landed on a small box. He pulled it out, heart already sinking. Plan B. Emergency contraceptive. His stomach churned. Sabrina had always claimed she stayed on birth control for health reasons, nothing more. But this wasn't that. There was no reason to carry something like this unless she was hiding something. Or someone. He snapped a photo of the box with his phone, slid it back exactly where he'd found it, and climbed into bed just as she emerged, wrapped in the scent of lavender and warm steam. She slipped under the covers and reached for him, her usual move when she wanted comfort or connection. But tonight, Jack shifted away, inching toward the edge of the bed. Startled, Sabrina froze. She withdrew, confused by his rejection. In the dim light, Jack could feel her eyes on his back. Does he know? She wondered, her throat tightening, tears burning behind her eyes. But she stayed silent. And so did he. The silence was deafening. The next morning, Jack moved through the house like a ghost. He said little. No kiss, no hug, no lingering glances. Just routine shower, shave, dress, coffee. He spotted the itinerary she mentioned, glanced at it, then slipped it into his briefcase without a word. He walked the kids to school, his face unreadable. When he returned, Sabrina was waiting by the front door. "Aren't you going to kiss me goodbye?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jack paused, hand on the doorknob. He turned and looked at her for a long, cold moment. Call me when you get there, he said flatly. Jack. I really do love you, she added, her voice gentle, almost pleading. He replied, emotionless. I know. Then he opened the door and walked out, leaving her standing there in stunned silence. This must be weighing on him more than I thought, she told herself. Once at his desk, Jack got to work. He scanned her itinerary and sent it to Frank along with the incriminating photos of her and Miles. He dropped off the DNA test kit at the lab, then booked an appointment with Tessa Monroe, a tough-as-nails divorce attorney with a reputation for tearing apart liars in court. If this thing blew up, he'd be ready. For a while, Jack buried himself in paperwork, determined to keep his mind focused. But just as he began to feel a sense of control again, his phone rang. It was Captain Riley. Dalton. My office. Now came the terse order. Jack sighed and rose from his desk. As he walked through the precinct, a few colleagues exchanged curious glances. They could feel something wasn't right. Inside the captain's office, Jack closed the door and sat down. Riley leaned on the edge of his desk, arms crossed. His voice was unusually soft. Okay, Jack. What's going on? Jack hesitated, staring at the floor. Then he spoke. I think Sabrina's been cheating on me, he said quietly. Riley's brows lifted, but he didn't interrupt. And I don't think it's recent, Jack continued. I believe it's been going on since the beginning. And there's a chance, a real chance, the kids might not even be mine. Riley rubbed his face. Jesus, Jack. I don't even know what to say. That's damn. I'm sorry. I've already started the process, Jack said. I've hired a PI, sent out DNA tests, and I've got an appointment with a divorce attorney this afternoon. Riley nodded solemnly. Good. You're doing what needs to be done. But you should also talk to Corwin, the department psychologist? Jack asked, eyes narrowing. Yeah, Riley replied. You're one of my best guys, but this is a hell of a thing to carry alone. You need someone to help you keep your head clear. You don't want this bleeding into your cases. Jack hesitated, then nodded. All right. I'll go. Riley gave a tight smile. You'll get through this. Just keep your priorities straight. Jack offered a faint smirk. Thanks, Cap. Now get out of here before I charge you rent. Jack left the office and made a beeline for Dr. Elise Corwin's office. When he arrived, she welcomed him with a wry grin. Well, Jack Dalton himself. This must be serious. It is, he said, dropping into a chair. I wouldn't be here otherwise. Elise's smile faded. She leaned in. Talk to me. And so he did. He told her everything, the affair, the photos, the DNA kit, the lawyer. He let the words fall, one after another, like pieces of evidence in an unsolvable case. And for the first time since this all began, Jack felt a tiny sliver of relief. He wasn't alone in it anymore. But you don't have hard proof yet? Elise asked gently. Not yet, Jack admitted. That's why I've got a private investigator on it, and I'm waiting for the DNA results. Have you spoken to a lawyer? She asked. I have, Tessa Monroe. Elise nodded, clearly impressed. Smart choice. She doesn't play around. But Jack, this isn't just about you. If your suspicions are confirmed, it's going to shake your kid's entire world. You're the only father they've ever known. I know, Jack said, his voice rough. I've thought about that a lot. But I've always taught them the value of truth. If it's real, if it's true. I can't lie to them. Elise reached across and placed a hand on his arm. Listen to me. Biology doesn't define a father. You've raised them. You've been there. You are their dad, no matter what that test says. Jack gave a slow nod, swallowing hard. Thanks, Elise. I won't forget that. Later that afternoon, Jack sat across from Tessa Monroe in her high-rise office, laying everything out. The photos. The growing suspicions. The test. The private investigator. Nothing held back. Tessa listened quietly, taking notes. Her expression never wavered. We'll wait for the lab results and what your investigator finds, she said. But Jack, if your suspicions are right, this is more than infidelity. If she knowingly listed you as the father while suspecting otherwise, we could be looking at paternity fraud. Paternity fraud? That's actually a thing. Jack asked, eyebrows raised. It is, Tessa confirmed. And in this state, it's a serious one. Depending on the circumstances, it could open the door to perjury too, especially if she ever lied under oath. Jack leaned back in his chair, stunned. This is going to get ugly, isn't it? It already is, Tessa said bluntly. But we'll be ready. Just don't tip her off. Let her bury herself. Jack left the meeting with a cold knot in his stomach. He was both clear on what came next and terrified of what it would reveal. When he got home, his phone rang. Frank. Hey, Jack. How you holding up? The PI asked. Jack sank into a chair. Still breathing. Sabrina's probably landing in New York right about now. I just met with my attorney. We're waiting on confirmation before making any moves. Smart, Frank said. I set up a motion and voice-activated camera in her hotel suite. It's synced to a private server. I'll send you the IP and login info so you can watch the feed in real time. Jack grabbed a pen and jotted down the details. You're a damn good friend, Frank. Thank you. Forget it, Frank said. I'll keep eyes on her. We'll talk soon. After the call ended, Jack immediately pulled up the feed. The hotel room looked untouched, neat, sterile, and cold, but the sight still churned his gut. He didn't want confirmation, but he needed it. Meanwhile, Sabrina sat by the window on the plane, watching clouds drift past. Her mind wandered across 2 decades of life with Jack. On paper, she had everything: a stable husband, 2 beautiful children, a lovely home. Jack had been everything she thought she needed: strong, dependable, a good provider. He was gentle with the kids, firm when needed, and deeply loyal. But her secret weighed heavily. For years, she'd rationalized her affair with Miles. He had been her first love, her impossible flame, the one who made her feel alive in a way Jack never quite could. Miles had always been intense, charismatic, and allergic to commitment. That's why she left him. But when he came back into her life, everything blurred. Jack was safety. Miles was desire. She'd married Jack quickly after Miles moved to New York. Back then, it had felt like starting over. But the spark with Miles reignited the moment she joined Apex Financials, thanks to Miles's glowing recommendation. It started with that first quarterly meeting. One look, and it was like time had folded in on itself. They fell into old rhythms, sneaking glances, secret touches. She crafted the perfect illusion for Jack: daily calls, spotless appearances, perfect smiles. And he bought it. She even manipulated the timing of her pregnancies. Though she and Jack had agreed on birth control until they were ready, she secretly stopped taking her pills before each New York trip. She wanted Miles's children, and she made sure it happened. Whenever Jack initiated intimacy during those weeks, she claimed cramps or migraines, quietly ensuring he had no chance of becoming the father. When she got pregnant with Ethan, Jack was overjoyed, though confused. She chalked it up to a fluke in her birth control. He didn't question it. Miles agreed to let Jack play the father publicly, never interfering. The pattern repeated with Chloe. After her difficult delivery, Sabrina convinced Jack to get a vasectomy, citing health concerns. It sealed the deal: no more chances of confusion. Quarter after quarter, she met Miles in New York. Their meetings became bolder, riskier. About 5 years ago, Lana, a sharp and observant new team member, noticed the dynamic between them and finally confronted Sabrina about it. Lana, a newer member of Sabrina's team, confronted her after weeks of unease and observation. Sabrina, she said firmly, catching her in the hallway, I'm just going to say it. Are you and Miles involved? Sabrina didn't flinch. She had a lie rehearsed, as if she'd always known this day might come. Yes, she said quickly, but it's not what you think. Jack knows. We have an understanding. An open marriage. Lana blinked, visibly thrown. Really? That doesn't sound like the Jack you've talked about. Sabrina softened her tone, adding a carefully calculated layer of sadness. Jack was injured in the line of duty a few years ago. It left him unable to be intimate. He's deeply ashamed. Please don't mention it. It would crush him. Lana hesitated, her gut screaming that something didn't add up, but she nodded anyway, unwilling to press further. Still, the lie settled heavily in her conscience. Sabrina pushed the conversation out of her mind as the plane descended into LaGuardia. She straightened her seat, secured her belt, and forced a calm breath, unaware that the house of cards she'd built was starting to collapse. Back home, Jack sat hunched over his desk, watching the screen like a man waiting for a bomb to go off. According to her itinerary, she'd landed 20 minutes ago. The screen flickered. The hotel camera activated. There she was. Sabrina entered the suite, polished and composed, wheeling her luggage like this was just another day. Seconds later, Miles followed her in. His presence turned Jack's blood to ice. They embraced like lovers who had nothing to hide. The way Sabrina touched him, the way Miles looked at her, it wasn't just physical. It was familiarity. History. They kissed. They laughed. They fell onto the bed. Jack turned away, while rising. But he made himself watch. He had to. Afterward, their conversation confirmed everything. I really needed that, Sabrina sighed. Same here, Miles said. So, how's the deputy husband? Don't call him that, she snapped. Jack's a respected officer. Respected enough to raise my kids and not even know it, Miles said smugly. Maybe I should send him a Father's Day card. Don't you dare, Sabrina said, hitting his arm. Why are you like this? When are you leaving him? Miles asked, more serious now. Not until the kids are grown. And probably after he retires. I want part of that pension. Jack's jaw tightened. Miles leaned back. Why don't you transfer into my department? We could be together full-time. Maybe when Chloe's out of the house. She's almost 17. What's another couple years, Miles said with a shrug. But I want to meet them eventually. We agreed, Sabrina said sharply. You're not to be involved. They think Jack's their father. Maybe after the divorce, he pressed. Maybe, she whispered. Miles looked at his watch. We've got dinner reservations. Sabrina stood and stretched. I'll shower. Meet you downstairs in 30. See you then, Miles said, pulling her in for one last kiss. I love you. I love you too, Sabrina replied, using the same tone, the same cadence she'd always used with Jack. Jack stared at the screen, unmoving, numb. Then her phone lit up, and seconds later, his own rang. He answered with a flat, hello. Hey, Jack. I just wanted to let you know I landed safely, she said cheerfully. Good, he replied, emotionless. How's the case going? I'm closing in on my prime suspect, Jack said, each word coated in venom. That's great. I'm glad it's wrapping up. You have no idea, he muttered. I'm heading to dinner now. I'll call tomorrow. Love you. Jack stared at the wall. Sure. I'll tell the kids. He hung up without waiting for a reply. Sabrina's voice echoed in his head, hollow, rehearsed. For the first time, he questioned whether she'd ever meant it. He saved the recording, encrypted it, and shut off the monitor. By the time he walked into the living room, Ethan and Chloe were home from school. Jack greeted them with warmth and normalcy, masking the chaos within. He helped with homework, made them laugh, asked about their day. They had no idea their world was about to change. The next morning, the call came. The DNA results are ready. He drove to the lab in silence, his stomach tight. In the car, he opened the envelope with trembling hands. 0% probability. Neither Ethan nor Chloe was his biological child. He stared at the paper until the words blurred, then carefully folded it, tucked it into a folder, and drove straight to Tessa Monroe's office. Tessa read the document silently, her brow furrowed in thought. This is significant, she said. It gives us a powerful foundation. But the video, not admissible, Jack finished for her. She nodded. Correct. It wasn't obtained through legal means, but it helps us understand the full scope of what we're dealing with. So where do we go from here? Jack asked. We file for divorce, citing infidelity and fraud. While this is a community property state, the court will take her behavior into account, especially with paternity fraud on the table. Paternity fraud, Jack repeated, his voice heavy. That's our angle? It is, Tessa said. And it might make all the difference. That's a bit more complicated, Tessa admitted. We'd need her to openly admit that she knowingly falsified the birth certificates. A confession, ideally in front of witnesses, would strengthen your case significantly. I'll get her to say it, Jack said, the edge in his voice sharp with resolve. Good, Tessa nodded. Come back on Wednesday. We'll go over next steps and tighten our approach. That evening, Sabrina called like clockwork, her voice soft and sweet. Jack kept his replies short, void of warmth, avoiding any mention of love. When the call ended, he turned back to his computer. The hotel camera feed flickered to life, showing Sabrina climbing into bed beside Miles. Jack's jaw tensed, but he kept watching. Painful as it was, this would all matter later. By Wednesday, Jack sat once again in Tessa's office, this time joined by District Attorney Calvin Rhodes and Deputy Nina Miles. Calvin got right to the point. We need a confession, he said firmly. If she admits she misrepresented the paternity on those birth certificates, we can use that to reinforce the fraud claim. She'll be back Saturday morning, Jack told them. I'll make sure the kids are out of the house. Smart, Calvin replied. Nina will be on standby to serve the divorce papers and make an arrest, if necessary. Jack gave a grim nod. Understood. Later that night, Sabrina called again. Jack kept his tone even. You're still flying back Saturday morning, right? Of course, she said. Why? Thought we might do something special when you're home. That sounds nice, she said softly. You know I love you, right? I know. Jack answered, his voice flat. You don't sound very convincing, she replied, a trace of unease creeping in. You haven't told me you love me all week. I loved you. Jack said simply, the past tense hanging in the air. Good night. There was a pause before Sabrina responded. Good night. She hung up, staring at the screen, unease written across her face. Jack allowed himself a faint smile. Let the doubt begin. On Friday, Jack packed bags for Ethan and Chloe, then drove them to their grandparents' house. The kids were confused. Why can't we just stay home? Ethan asked. Mom's coming back tomorrow morning. I need to talk to her alone, Jack said gently. I'll explain everything in the afternoon. Chloe's voice trembled. Are you divorcing her? Jack's heart clenched. It's not something I can stop. Did you cheat on her? Chloe blurted, eyes brimming with tears. No, Jack said firmly. I've never even looked at another woman. Ethan's brow furrowed. So she cheated on you? Jack exhaled, emotion catching in his throat. We'll talk tomorrow. Just trust me. The rest of the ride passed in silence, broken only by Chloe's quiet sobbing. When they arrived, Sabrina's mother Helen met them at the door. Her face tightened with concern. What's going on? She asked. Why is Chloe crying? I need to talk to Sabrina alone tomorrow, Jack said, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. I'll explain everything after. You're not going to hurt her, are you? Helen asked, eyes narrowing. No, he replied. But you deserve to know what's been happening. You're divorcing her. Yes, Jack said quietly. And I have every reason to. Helen reluctantly nodded. You'd better explain tomorrow. That night, Jack checked the live feed again. Sabrina was curled up next to Miles, laughing about something. His stomach churned, but his face remained still. He picked up his phone and called her. Hey, Jack, she answered brightly. Everything okay? You still arriving tomorrow morning? He asked. Yes. What? How's the case? She asked. Almost wrapped, Jack replied. By this time tomorrow, the suspect will be in custody. Then maybe things can go back to normal, she said hopefully. Maybe, Jack muttered. We'll talk in the morning. He ended the call and returned his gaze to the screen. Sabrina looked down at her phone, her smile gone, eyes glistening. Jack leaned back, whispering to himself, Jackaro, everything changes. As dawn broke the next morning, Jack stood on the back porch, finishing a cigarette. At exactly 7:30 a.m., Nina Miles pulled into the driveway, stepping out of her patrol car with a purposeful stride. They prepped for what was coming. By 7:45, Sabrina's car eased into the garage. Jack watched as she stepped out, heels tapping across the concrete. She opened the door leading to the deck, her voice echoing. Jack? What's going on? Who is this? And why is there a cop car out front? Where are the kids? Jack met her calmly. They're with your mother, he said evenly. This is Deputy Nina Miles. Have a seat. We need to talk. Sabrina shot a wary glance at Nina, then back at Jack. I need a shower first, she muttered, already moving past him. Not this time, Jack said sharply, his voice cutting through the air like a blade. Sit down. Now. The sudden firmness stopped her cold. She hesitated, then returned to the patio table and sat across from Nina, arms crossed, lips pressed tight. Jack took his seat at the head of the table and pulled a small device from his pocket. He set it down and clicked it on. I hope you don't mind, he said. I'll be recording this conversation. Sabrina's eyes widened. What are you doing? Given the circumstances, Jack continued, I think it's best to advise you of your rights. What are you talking about? Sabrina asked, her voice rising. You have the right to remain silent, Jack said clearly. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford one, one will be appointed to you. Her face went pale. Jack, I'm not one of your suspects. You are, he said, cold and clear. In fact, you're my primary suspect. He reached into his folder and slid 2 documents across the table toward her, one the DNA test results. The other, a copy of the falsified birth certificate. Do you recognize these? Jack asked, sliding the birth certificates across the table. Sabrina glanced down, her brow furrowing. Yeah, those are the kids' birth certificates. What's this about? For the record, Jack said evenly, whose name is on the signature line. Sabrina hesitated. Mine. On both. Read the statement under your signature. She glanced at him, uncertain, then read aloud. Under penalty of perjury, I certify that the above is true and factual. Jack's voice tightened. And who is listed as the father? Sabrina's eyes darted between the documents and Jack's face. You are, she said softly. Read the name, he pressed, his voice steely. Sabrina swallowed. Thomas Jefferson Dalton. Without a word, Jack pulled out another document and placed it in front of her. This is a DNA report from Acme Labs. It compares samples from me, Ethan, and Chloe. The results conclusively show that while the children are biologically related to each other, neither of them is mine. Sabrina's hands trembled. You are, she whispered. Jack, you are their father. Jack's expression was like stone. Don't lie to me, Sabrina. Not anymore. He reached for the laptop beside him and clicked a file. Let me show you something. Sabrina's face paled as the video began to play. Her voice, clear and unmistakable, filtered through the speakers, laughing, whispering to Miles, wrapped around him in bed. Jack didn't flinch. He'd seen it too many times. How did you get this? She asked, her voice cracking. That's not the question, Jack snapped. The question is why you and Miles conspired to defraud me. You both admitted he's the biological father. You put my name on their birth certificates anyway. That's fraud, Sabrina. Her face twisted with fury. Fine, she shouted. I wanted Miles's children, not yours. Yes, I signed the forms. Yes, I listed you. It was my choice. You don't get to make that kind of choice alone, Jack replied coldly. You don't get to steal someone's fatherhood. His eyes narrowed. What did you tell your coworkers about your relationship with Miles? That's none of your business, she hissed. Do you know Lana Whitmore? He asked. Sabrina stiffened. Yes. Do you remember what you told her about our marriage? She looked away. I might have said, we had an open marriage. But that wasn't true, was it? Jack pressed. Sabrina exhaled, defeated. No. And what else did you say? She lowered her voice to a whisper. That you were injured. That you couldn't function. Injured how? Jack asked, leaning in. In the line of duty, she muttered. That you couldn't perform sexually. Jack leaned back, jaw clenched. So you lied to justify your affair. And you didn't stop there, you told that story to others. Sabrina couldn't look at him. Yes. Jack stood. Then we're done here. He nodded to Nina Miles, who stepped forward and handed Sabrina a sealed envelope. Sabrina Dalton, Nina said calmly. You've been served. Sabrina blinked. What is this? Divorce papers, Jack said flatly. On the grounds of infidelity and fraud. Nina's tone hardened. Please stand. Turn around and place your hands behind your back. Sabrina stared at her in disbelief. What? Why? You're under arrest for 2 counts of paternity fraud and conspiracy to commit fraud, Nina said, producing the handcuffs. This can't be happening, Sabrina whispered, panic rising. Oh, it's happening, Jack said. Fraud is a felony in this state. Get a lawyer. As Nina led her away, Sabrina twisted back toward Jack, tears running down her face. Jack, please. I love you. He shook his head. If this is love, I'd hate to see how you treat someone you don't care about. He stood motionless as the patrol car pulled out of the driveway, the siren off but the damage done. Relief flooded through him, but it brought no joy. Only silence. Only loss. He had loved her for more than 20 years. And now, he would have to face the children and tell them everything. Later that morning, Jack arrived at Helen and Ray's house, laptop in hand. When Helen opened the door, her face was pale with concern. Jack, what's going on? She asked. It's time to explain, he said grimly. Where are the kids? In the backyard, she replied. I'll get them. A few minutes later, the whole family gathered in the living room. Ray, Sabrina's father, looked at Jack expectantly. What's this about, son? Where's Sabrina? Jack drew in a breath. She's in county jail. Ray blinked. Jail? For what? Jack turned to Ethan and Chloe, his voice heavy. What I'm about to tell you. It's going to hurt. But you deserve the truth. He looked into their eyes, steady but sorrowful. Your mother lied to me. She lied to all of us. I'm not your biological father. Chloe gasped. That's not true. You're our dad. I raised you, Jack said, his voice breaking. And I love you with everything I have. But biologically, I'm not. Silence fell over the room like a storm cloud. Jack continued. Before I met your mom, she was engaged to a man named Miles Granger. He didn't want children, but she wanted his kids anyway. So she made it happen without his commitment. Without my knowledge. Helen's face went white. I remember him. Tall, blonde, Scandinavian-looking. She stepped away and returned moments later with an old photo album. Flipping through the pages, she found the one she was looking for. She handed the photo to Ray. He stared at it. And slowly, his face darkened. The resemblance between Miles and the children was unmistakable. Jack gave a solemn nod. Now you know. That's him, Jack said, nodding toward the photograph in Ray's hand. Sabrina and Miles conspired to put my name on the kids' birth certificates, knowing full well it wasn't true. Ethan's brow furrowed. Wait, so Mom's in jail because she cheated on you? Jack shook his head. No, son. She's in jail for paternity fraud. When she signed those birth certificates, she committed a felony. It's a serious offense in this state. Chloe's lip trembled. What's going to happen to us now? Are we going to lose you too? Jack leaned forward, his voice softening. Never. I've already petitioned for full custody of both of you. I may not be your biological father, but I've been here since the beginning. I've loved you every single day of your lives, and that's never going to change. Chloe burst into tears and threw herself into his arms. I love you, Daddy, she sobbed. Ethan stood still, eyes brimming, then stepped forward, voice barely audible. Am I still your son? Jack pulled him close. Of course, you are. You'll always be my son. The three of them clung to each other, their tears flowing freely as they held on tighter than ever. In that moment, no DNA test could challenge their bond. I love you, Dad, Ethan whispered. I love you too, son, Jack replied, his voice breaking. We'll get through this. Together. Ray cleared his throat, breaking the quiet. So, what happens to Sabrina now? She's being held in county jail, Jack answered. The DA's filing formal charges, and they're working to extradite Miles. He'll face conspiracy charges, too. Sabrina might call you, Jack added, glancing at Helen. Helen's expression tightened. What if she's released on bail? She might ask to stay here, Jack said. But I've already packed her things. They're in the garage. Just then, the phone rang. The tension in the room sharpened. Helen rose and answered with a firm, hello? Sabrina's frantic voice came through the receiver, muffled but unmistakable. It took Helen a moment to calm her down. Sabrina, listen to me, Helen said firmly. Jack has told us everything. And I have to say, I'm heartbroken. If you didn't want Jack's children, you shouldn't have married him. Sabrina's voice rose again, but Helen cut her off. No excuses. You broke the law, Sabrina. We raised you better. If you're released on bail, you can stay here. But don't expect sympathy. The kids are staying with Jack. Sabrina's protests grew more desperate. Helen turned to the kids. Do either of you want to speak with your mother? Ethan and Chloe exchanged a glance before answering in unison. No way. Jack and Ray chuckled softly, the tension easing for a moment. Helen returned to the call. I'm sorry, Sabrina. They're not ready to speak to you. Maybe later, once they've had time to process everything. For now, goodbye. She hung up and let the phone rest in silence. Ray sighed. She's got a lot of growing up to do. Helen's face softened as she looked at Jack and the kids. Why don't they stay here one more night? Give you a chance to settle in at home. Ethan nodded, and Chloe wiped her eyes, quietly agreeing. Helen turned to Jack and placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. Go home, Jack. Rest. You've carried enough. Jack hugged her tightly. Thank you for everything. He shook Ray's hand, then turned to his children and pulled them close once more. I'll pick you up tomorrow, okay? We love you, Dad, Chloe whispered. I love you too. On Monday, Sabrina stood before a judge for her arraignment. District Attorney Calvin Rhodes laid out the charges in sharp detail, emphasizing the seriousness of the crime and her risk of flight. The judge denied bail, citing her possible attempt to flee to New York. 3 months later, Sabrina's trial concluded. The jury found her guilty of 2 counts of paternity fraud and 2 counts of conspiracy to commit fraud. She was sentenced to 10 years in prison, eligible for parole after 6. Her employer, Apex Financials, terminated her contract the day after the verdict. Miles, extradited shortly after, faced the same charges. He pled guilty and received 5 years with parole eligibility after 3. Jack filed a civil suit against Miles and won. The settlement was substantial. Every penny went into college funds for Ethan and Chloe. The divorce was finalized soon after. Thanks to Tessa Monroe's sharp legal strategy, Sabrina received just 30% of the marital assets, enough to start over once released, but not a cent more than what the law required. Jack made sure the funds would be there when she got out, but neither he nor the kids visited her again. They tried, once. One visit. It ended with Chloe in tears and Ethan furious. After that, Chloe refused to return, and Ethan never pushed her to. Life began to settle. The storm passed, and the days grew normal again. Ethan graduated high school with honors and joined the Marine Corps, proudly stepping into his father's footsteps as a military police officer. Jack brought Chloe to the graduation ceremony, bursting with pride as they watched Ethan accept his diploma and uniform. That moment brought the family closer than ever. Jack stayed in law enforcement, eventually earning a promotion to captain after his longtime mentor retired. He poured himself into the work, but his personal life remained quiet, much to Chloe's annoyance. One day, she handed him a folded note with a sly grin. "What's this?" Jack asked, raising an eyebrow. "Miss Lang, my English teacher, wants to meet you," she said innocently. "This isn't one of your matchmaking plots, is it?" "Who, me?" Chloe smirked. The next afternoon, Jack met Miss Lang in her classroom. She stood and extended a hand. "Call me Erica," she said warmly. "You must be Captain Dalton." "Jack," he replied, smiling. "Chloe said you wanted to see me." "She may have exaggerated," Erica said with a wink. "But it's nice to meet the father of one of my favorite students." "I hear you're single." Jack chuckled, just a little nervous. "Chloe likes to meddle." "Are you?" "I am," Erica said, her eyes twinkling. "Maybe we should let her meddle a little." Jack's smile widened. "Dinner?" Erica nodded. "Let's see where this goes." For the first time in years, Jack felt it. Hope. A door cracking open. A chance for something new.